The taxi driver kept glancing at me through the rearview mirror, his weathered face creased with concern. I must have looked pathetic, mascara-streaked cheeks, trembling hands clutching my phone like a lifeline, hyperventilating in the back seat of a Parisian cab at 2 in the morning. "Madam, you're certain? The address." His thick French accent barely registered through the static in my brain. I nodded, unable to form words. "The hotel we'd checked into just 6 hours ago. The hotel where my husband of 8 years had kissed my forehead, told me he was going to get a champagne from the lobby bar, and never came back. 3 hours. I'd waited 3 hours in that romantic suite overlooking the Eiffel Tower before I finally went looking for him. The concierge had watched me with pitying eyes as I described Marcus. Tall, salt and pepper hair, charcoal gray suit, American accent. "No, sir, madam. No one matching that description at the bar tonight." That's when I checked my phone and saw it. A single text message, sent 20 minutes after he'd left our room. "I'm sorry, Natalie. You'll understand soon. Don't try to follow me. It's already done. My credit cards declined. All 4 of them. My bank app, access denied." I'd called our joint account helpline with shaking fingers, and the automated voice had delivered the final blow. "This account has been closed as of today at 4:47 p.m. Eastern Standard Time." While I was somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, dreaming about our anniversary trip, Marcus had been systematically destroying my entire financial existence. The taxi pulled up to the hotel. Through my tears, I could see the golden lights of the entrance, the doorman in his crisp uniform, the life I'd had just hours ago when I still believed my husband loved me. I had 43 euros in my wallet, in a foreign country, no credit cards, no access to money, and a husband who had vanished into the Parisian night after stripping me of everything. The driver turned around, his eyes kind. "Madam, I take you to police, yes? This is not, how do you say, normal." But I wasn't thinking about the police. I was thinking about the look on Marcus's face when he'd kissed me goodbye, the tenderness in his eyes, the way he'd whispered, "Happy anniversary, Nat. Here's to forever." What kind of monster kisses his wife with that much love and then abandons her in a foreign country with nothing? I was about to find out that the monster I'd married was far more calculating than I could have ever imagined. 72 hours earlier, 3 days before Paris, I'd been standing in our kitchen in Westchester, New York, watching Marcus make his famous Sunday morning pancakes. Sun streamed through the bay windows, catching the silver in his hair, and I remember thinking how lucky I was. How absolutely, ridiculously blessed. "You're staring," he'd said, glancing over his shoulder with that crooked smile that had first caught my attention at a corporate networking event 8 years ago. "Just appreciating the view," I teased, sipping my coffee. He'd walked over, spatula still in hand, and kissed me softly. 3 days until Paris. Can you believe it? 8 years ago, you agreed to marry my sorry self. "Best decision I ever made," I'd said, meaning it with every fiber of my being. If only I'd known that Marcus had been planning my destruction for months, maybe years. Our marriage had been built on what I thought was solid ground. We'd met when I was 28, a rising marketing director at a pharmaceutical company. Marcus was 35, a financial consultant with his own firm. We'd dated for 2 years before he proposed on a beach in Santorini, getting down on one knee as the sun set over the caldera. The wedding was elegant but not ostentatious. We'd honeymooned in Bali. We'd bought the house in Westchester together, or so I thought. We talked about children but decided to wait. We'd built what I believed was a partnership. I'd been so catastrophically wrong. The signs had been there, I realized later, microscopic cracks in the foundation that I'd been too in love to notice. 6 months ago, Marcus had suggested we consolidate our finances for tax purposes. It made sense. His financial expertise far exceeded mine. I'd signed the papers he'd put in front of me without a second thought. For months ago, he'd convinced me to add his name to the deed of the small investment property I'd inherited from my grandmother in Vermont. Estate planning, he'd called it. If something happens to you, the legal complications could be enormous. 2 months ago, he'd had me sign a power of attorney. Just temporary, He'd assured me. I'm restructuring some investments, and I need to be able to act quickly on your behalf. You trust me, don't you? Of course I trusted him. He was my husband, my partner, my person. Every signature, every document, every strategic financial move had been a carefully orchestrated step in his plan to rob me blind. Back in that Parisian hotel room at 3 a.m, I sat on the edge of the bed in the same dress I'd worn to dinner, my phone clutched in my hands, and began piecing together the wreckage of my life. Email after email materialized as I refreshed my inbox with increasingly frantic swipes. The notifications had been filtering in while I'd been crying in the taxi, each one a fresh knife wound. Your property transfer for 847 Maple Street, Westchester, New York has been completed. Final distribution from account ending in 4392 processed. Your retirement account transfer has been finalized. Notice of lease termination, 847 Maple Street, Westchester, New York. He'd sold her house. He'd drained every account. He'd liquidated my retirement fund, somehow bypassing every protection I thought existed. The Vermont property, gone. My grandmother's legacy, sold to a holding company I'd never heard of. My hands shook as I scrolled through months of statements I'd never bothered to check. Marcus had always handled the finances. Why wouldn't he? He was the expert. God, I'd been such a fool. I called my best friend, Simone, back in New York. She answered on the first ring, her voice thick with sleep. Nat, it's like 3 a.m. here. What? He's gone. My voice cracked. Marcus is gone. He left me here with nothing. Simone, he took everything. The house, the accounts, my inheritance, everything. The silence on the other end lasted exactly 3 seconds before Simone's voice came back, sharp and alert. I'm looking at your location. You're still at the hotel? I don't know what to do. I have 40 euros. My cards are all declined. I can't even pay for this hotel room past tonight. I'm trapped here, and I don't. Listen to me. Simone's voice cut through my spiral. Listen. Take a breath. I'm wiring you money right now through Western Union. It'll be there in an hour. Then you get to the embassy first thing in the morning. This is fraud, Nat. This is criminal. He can't just. He had me sign things, I whispered. Papers. He said they were for estate planning for taxes. What if I signed away my own rights? What if this is all legal? I don't care if you signed papers that said he could sell your organs, Simone said fiercely. Marriage is a legal contract. He can't just liquidate everything and abandon you in another country. Get to the embassy. File a police report. And Nat? Yeah. We're going to destroy him. After I hung up, I sat in that hotel room and let myself break. I cried until my throat was raw, until there were no tears left, until I was just a hollow shell curled up on expensive Egyptian cotton sheets. Then, as dawn broke over Paris, painting the Eiffel Tower in shades of gold and rose, something shifted inside me. The grief didn't disappear, but underneath it, rising like lava from some deep, primal place, was rage. Marcus thought he'd won. He thought he'd orchestrated the perfect crime, the devoted husband who'd slowly, methodically positioned himself to take everything from his trusting wife, then disappeared into the European sunset with all the spoils. He'd underestimated me, not because I was particularly clever or strong, but because he'd forgotten one crucial detail in his elaborate scheme. A woman with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous creature on earth. The American embassy in Paris was less dramatic than I'd imagined. Fluorescent lights, waiting room chairs that squeaked, and a young consular officer named Jennifer who looked fresh out of college but had eyes that said she'd seen this story before. Mrs. Holloway, she said, reviewing my case file on her computer screen. I've spoken with the NYPD Financial Crimes Unit. They're very interested in your husband's activities. I leaned forward, my borrowed clothes. Simone had overnight me a suitcase, hanging loose on my frame. I'd lost 6 pounds in 2 days. What does that mean? Can they arrest him? Jennifer's expression was carefully neutral. It's complicated. Your husband was very thorough. Many of the documents you signed did give him legal authority to manage your joint assets. However, there are some concerning patterns that suggest fraud and possibly identity theft. Identity theft? He's my husband. Was your husband? Jennifer corrected gently. The divorce papers were filed 3 weeks ago. You were served at an address in Buffalo, New York. The room tilted. I've never lived in Buffalo. I didn't receive any divorce papers. Exactly. Jennifer's eyes glinted. That's one of the angles the investigators are pursuing. Additionally, there's the matter of the second mortgage on your property that was taken out in your name 6 months ago. The signature doesn't quite match your others on file. My mouth went dry. Second mortgage? $200,000. The funds were transferred to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands.
She paused.
Mrs. Holloway, how much do you actually know about your husband's business operations? Over the next hour, Jennifer and a detective conferencing in from New York painted a picture that made me physically nauseous. Marcus Holloway wasn't just a financial consultant. He was a con artist with a specialty, marrying women with assets, slowly gaining legal control, then vanishing with everything. I was his third wife. The first 2 had been too ashamed to press charges. One had taken her own life. We've been tracking him for 2 years, Detective Rodriguez explained through the video call. But he's careful. Always stays just on the edge of legal. The documents are real, the signatures, mostly, check out. By the time his victims realize what's happened, he's disappeared. How did you find out about the other wives? My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. The second wife's sister kept investigating. She found wife number 1. They connected the dots. Then your friend Simone called the NYPD Financial Crimes tip line yesterday, and we realized he'd struck again. I thought about those Sunday morning pancakes. The anniversary trip. The way Marcus had held me at night, whispering promises into my hair. All of it, every moment, every touch, every I love you, had been a performance. A long con. I hadn't been his wife. I'd been his mark. There's something else, Jennifer said carefully. We tracked his phone. He's still in Paris. My head snapped up. What? He checked into a hotel near Montmartre yesterday. We believe he's meeting someone, possibly to transfer assets or establish new identities. She slid a piece of paper across the desk. This is his location. The French police are coordinating with us, but these things move slowly internationally. If you were to, say, accidentally encounter him in a public place, you want me to confront him? I stared at her. I want you to understand that as his wife, and you're still legally married until that fraudulent divorce is finalized, you have certain rights, including the right to have a conversation with your husband about your shared assets. Jennifer's professional mask slipped for just a second, revealing something fierce underneath. What you do with that information is up to you. Detective Rodriguez leaned toward his camera. Mrs. Holloway, if you do see him, do not put yourself in danger. But if you happen to record any conversation where he admits to fraud or reveals where assets are hidden, that would be extremely helpful to our investigation. I looked down at the paper with Marcus's hotel address. The Hotel Belle Époque in Montmartre, a boutique property known for its romantic ambience and discretion. Of course, he was probably already with his next victim. Some unsuspecting woman who thought she'd met the man of her dreams. One more thing, I said, looking between Jennifer and the detective on screen. The offshore accounts. Is there any way to freeze them? Rodriguez smiled grimly. We're working on it. But these things take time. Days, maybe weeks. I folded the paper carefully and tucked it into my pocket. What if you didn't need weeks? What if you had the account passwords? That would change everything, Rodriguez said. But those are heavily encrypted, multi-factor authentication. Marcus uses the same password structure for everything, I interrupted. Variations on his mother's maiden name plus significant dates.
I know his phone PIN.
I know his laptop password. I know every security question answer because I lived with him for 8 years. For the first time since Marcus had walked out of our hotel room, I felt something besides grief and rage. I felt powerful. The Hotel Belle Époque was tucked into a quiet street in Montmartre, all wrought iron balconies and flowers cascading from window boxes. I sat at a cafe across the street, wearing sunglasses and a scarf Simone had sent, feeling ridiculous and terrified and absolutely resolute. I'd been waiting for 3 hours when I finally saw him. Marcus walked out of the hotel at sunset, and the sight of him hit me like a physical blow. He looked exactly the same, that confident stride, the expensive watch catching the light, the slight smile playing at his lips. He looked like a man without a care in the world. He looked like a man who definitely wasn't grieving the wife he'd abandoned. But he wasn't alone. A woman walked beside him, mid-30s, elegant in a cream-colored dress. She laughed at something he said, and he put his hand on the small of her back in a gesture so familiar it made me want to vomit. That was my gesture. My husband. My life he was living with someone else. Except he'd never really been mine at all. I followed them through the winding streets of Montmartre, keeping a careful distance. They stopped at a wine bar with outdoor seating. Marcus pulled out her chair, ordered a bottle of something expensive, looked into her eyes with that same intense focus he'd once used on me. I waited until they were deep in conversation, then I walked straight up to their table. "Hello, Marcus." The color drained from his face. The woman looked confused, glancing between us. Marcus recovered quickly. I had to give him that. His expression shifted into something approximating embarrassed concern.
Natalie.
This isn't what it looks like. Really? I pulled out the empty chair and sat down uninvited. Because it looks like you're on a date 3 days after you abandoned your wife in a foreign country with no money and no way to get home. The woman, her name was Isabel, I'd learn later, went very still. Wife. Oh, he didn't mention me? I kept my voice light, conversational. I'm not surprised. Marcus, should I tell her about the house you sold out from under me? Or the retirement accounts you liquidated? Maybe she'd be interested in knowing about the fake divorce papers you filed with a false address. Marcus's jaw tightened. Isabel, this is a misunderstanding. Natalie and I are separated. She's clearly having some kind of episode. I'm recording this conversation, I said calmly, holding on my phone. And there's a detective from the NYPD Financial Crimes Unit who's very interested in hearing what you have to say. So you can either talk to me right now, or you can talk to French police in about 20 minutes. Your choice. For a long moment, Marcus just stared at me. Then, slowly, he started to laugh. You know what, Nat? I actually underestimated you. He leaned back in his chair. All pretense dropped. I thought you'd just slink back to New York, broken, file some pathetic police report that would go nowhere. But here you are. I'm almost impressed. Where's the money, Marcus? Gone. He sipped his wine. Transferred, laundered, invested. Scattered across a dozen accounts you'll never find. By the time any court gets involved, it'll be impossible to trace. Isabel stood up, her chair scraping loudly. You're insane. Both of you. Sit down, Isabel, I said quietly. You're not going anywhere until you hear what kind of man you're dealing with. Something in my voice made her hesitate. Marcus moved fast, faster than I expected. He grabbed my phone off the table and hurled it into the street, where it shattered against the cobblestones. You want to play detective? His voice was low, dangerous. You have nothing. No evidence, no money, no leverage. You signed everything over to me willingly. I made sure of that. You're right, I said. I did sign everything, including the power of attorney that gives you authority over my accounts. I smiled. And I've been married to you for 8 years. Which means I can recite your mother's maiden name, your social security number, every password you've ever used, and the name of the hospital where you were born. All your security question answers. His face changed. You're bluffing. Carrington, I said softly. Your mother's maiden name. The password to your offshore accounts is probably some variation of Carrington followed by her birthday, March 15th, Carrington 0315, maybe. Or maybe you got creative and used your own birth year. Carrington 031578. Am I getting warm? Marcus lunged across the table, but Isabel grabbed his arm. Don't. Marcus, don't. There are people watching. He was right about one thing: my phone was destroyed. But what he didn't know was that I'd been wearing a wire. Jennifer from the embassy had arranged it before I left. Every word was being transmitted to French authorities 2 blocks away. "You're going to prison," I said, standing up. "Not today, maybe not tomorrow. But I will make sure you pay for what you did to me. And to your other wives. All of them." Other wives. Isabel's voice was barely a whisper. I looked at her with genuine pity. "He's done this before. You're not special. You're just next." Marcus's hands clenched into fists on the table. "You can't prove anything." "Maybe not. But I can make your life hell trying." I leaned close, my voice deadly calm. "You took everything from me. My home, my security, my trust. You made me question my own judgment, my own worth. But you know what you didn't take."
What?
The word was bitter. My voice. "And I'm going to use it. Every woman you've ever scammed, I'm going to find them. I'm going to tell my story so loudly that no one will ever trust you again. You can run, Marcus. You can change your name, your face, your entire identity. But I will hunt you to the ends of the earth." Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Marcus heard them too. His eyes darted toward the street, calculating escape routes. "You called the police." "I told you I would." He stood slowly, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender that was probably meant to look non-threatening. "This isn't over, Natalie." "You're absolutely right," I said. "It's not." 3 months later, the courtroom in Manhattan was nothing like I'd imagined. No dramatic lighting, no tense background music. Just fluorescent lights, uncomfortable wooden benches, and the administrative machinery of justice grinding slowly forward. Marcus sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit.
He wouldn't look at me.
The charges were extensive: wire fraud, identity theft, falsification of documents, and about a dozen other financial crimes I still didn't fully understand. French authorities had arrested him that night in Montmartre. Isabel, who turned out to be an heiress from Lyon, had been the one to tackle him when he tried to run. She'd pressed her own charges. The other wives had come forward. Catherine, wife number 1, testified about her nervous breakdown. Laura, wife number 2, detailed how he'd taken everything, including her family's restaurant that had been in business for 3 generations. We stood together in that courthouse, a line of women Marcus Holloway had tried to erase, and we made sure the world saw us. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Karen Chen, had built an airtight case. My wire recording, the forged divorce papers, the offshore accounts that I'd helped investigators crack by providing Marcus's password patterns, bank statements, emails, testimony from financial experts. Mr. Holloway operated a sophisticated scheme that targeted vulnerable women, Chen told the jury. He didn't just steal money. He stole identities, futures, and in one tragic case, he stole a life. This was not a crime of passion or desperation. This was calculated, premeditated, serial fraud. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. 15 years. That's what he got. 15 years in federal prison, plus restitution to all his victims. I testified at his sentencing hearing. Marcus finally looked at me then, and I saw something in his eyes I hadn't expected: shame. When I met Marcus Holloway, I told the judge, I thought I was lucky. I thought I'd found a partner, someone who saw me and valued me. Instead, I found a predator who saw me as an opportunity. I described those 72 hours in Paris. The fear, the betrayal, the moment I'd realized the man I loved had never existed. But here's what Marcus didn't understand. I continued. You can steal someone's money. You can steal their property, their security, even their peace of mind. But you can't steal their fundamental worth. You can't take away who they are at their core. I looked directly at Marcus. You tried to destroy me. You failed. The judge, a gray-haired woman who'd probably seen thousands of cases, looked at Marcus with something close to disgust. Mr. Holloway, you exploited the trust of multiple women who committed their lives to you. You manipulated legal systems and financial institutions. You showed no remorse until you were caught. I hope you use your time in prison to reflect on the damage you've caused. After the sentencing, I walked out of that courthouse into brilliant autumn sunshine. Simone was waiting for me on the steps, along with Catherine and Laura. We didn't say much. We didn't need to. We'd survived. We'd fought back. We'd won. 6 months after, I sat in a cafe in Brooklyn, not Paris, but close enough, working on my laptop. The book was almost finished. The Paris Unraveling, how I took down the husband who tried to destroy me. My agent said publishers were already in a bidding war for it. Some streaming service had reached out about adaptation rights. Catherine, Laura, and I were planning a podcast about financial abuse and how to protect yourself from predators like Marcus. The money from the restitution had finally started coming through. Not all of it. Marcus had hidden millions that might never be recovered. But enough. Enough to buy a small apartment in the city. Enough to start over. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Hi, Natalie. My name is Rachel. I think I'm Marcus's 4th wife. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a long moment. There was always another victim. Always someone else who needed to hear that they weren't alone, weren't crazy, weren't to blame. I typed back, yes. When and where? Because this was my life now. Not the one I'd planned. Not the one Marcus had tried to take from me. But mine, built from the ashes of betrayal into something real and true and strong. I'd gone to Paris expecting champagne and romance and a celebration of love. Instead, I'd found out exactly what I was made of. And it turned out I was made of steel.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.